if you as an artist are not taking risks, then you're not really fulfilling a major part of artistry. You're not growing. All right, well, welcome my creative friends and collaborators. It's Brent Harvey with this week's Empower Your Self-Sustaining Actor chat Q&A. Every time after I do this, I remember what I'm going to call it, and then the day I go to do it, I forget. So it's part of the I should write it down. Hope everybody had a creative week. And if you caught the lessons, the previous lessons, hope they guided you some form or fashion in your week of creativity. For me, it's been an interesting week of just self-growth, things like that. And like basically what I talked about in our very first episode about mindset, shifting mindset in and around my beliefs and limitations that have like basically created my path for good or for bad, especially the self-sabotage that I've done along the way. Because that, like, I think I talked about that in the first one, or maybe it was the third one about chasing waves and stuff like that, about chasing opportunities. But basically how like, if I'm being honest, a lot of opportunities came to me in my journey. In hindsight, at the time I didn't see them as opportunities, or I didn't see them at all, but in hindsight, looking back and realizing there were so many great opportunities, things that I really wanted to happen in my life and in my career, but I sabotaged them because I didn't believe I deserved them or I was worthy and stuff like that. So that's been an interesting. I'm not going to go too into it right now. I do want to talk about it, but it's because I've just started a new program that I'm working on. I'm literally at the beginning of it. I don't want to say results. I've seen, I guess it could be called results. A lot of things have been happening, but in the past, I've been so quick to like discover something new and then get excited to run out and share it with everybody and be like, this is it. I figured it out. Then as I got down the road, I was like, yeah, this wasn't quite it. So with this one, I'm kind of, I'm letting it play out a bit more to kind of see what happens before I endorse it and share it, because I want to make sure it is something of value that people can use. And if it is, I'll be happy to, because my goal and why I started doing this was to share my knowledge and information, things like that, with whoever was looking for it, or maybe somebody who didn't know they were looking for it, but it's been within them. So yeah, I'm looking forward to sharing that at the point when the timing's right. But yeah, so what I want to talk about today, like what I want to talk about today was, I don't know, I've been kind of juggling around, and I want to do another one about a technique, acting techniques and things like that, because I don't want this to turn just into a motivational thing, but like something that you can take some techniques or lessons or tools from to apply. But as I was sitting here getting ready to come on, we kind of had some technical issues that I've been dealing with, and maybe some of you are not even getting to log on to this because of it, and I apologize for that. This is all new. I'm trying to figure that out. But what came through me, like literally at the last second, was to talk about taking risks. And it's been on my mind a lot this week, in hindsight, because of the work I'm doing, the releasing trauma and going back into my childhood, things like that. But it's not even this week. It's been on my mind for a while, like consciously, like not thinking about, but also reflecting and thinking about how I got two nieces. They're 7 and 6 now. And kids are such a great reflection, or yeah, I'd say a reflection or a reminder of who we are at the core before all the programming and beliefs and ideologies come into play. I got a friend who just has a brand new daughter who's only a couple months old. We had lunch with, and we were having a discussion about people's, a lot politically, like what's going on in the world right now. And they asked my opinion. I was just like, look at your daughter, man. Like that right there is the core of what we are. Like, anything she, if she has to poop, she poops. If she has to burp, she burps. If she cries, she cries. Like, and she's not worried about the future. She's not like, what am I doing with my life? And she's not worried about like, oh man, last week, you know, I pooped my diaper, or I didn't, or whatever. And I what am, I'm such a screw up. Like all the things that are stopping us from achieving what we want to achieve, or expressing what we want to express in our art, is all learned habits. And I realized in reflection of that, like kids innately are risk takers. Like they're not. I remember, it wasn't until like I was 18, 19. I think I was like 18 or 19 when like something happened in my life. And then like overnight, I was aware of my mortality, like that I could die. Prior to that, I was like, I wasn't worried about it. I wasn't concerned about it. Like I was doing stupid shit that, in hindsight, I'm like, oh, I could have died doing that, or, paralyzed myself or something like that. But like we're designed to take risks as kids. And then we get, not even if you were to remove the social programming and, just societal programming, there is, and I was listening to this lecture this week about how our brain shifts and becomes, goes into a new phase where it then is aware of self-preservation. So it's a natural thing. But I realize in my own life, but also looking at other people, I'm going, why don't they break out? Why don't they do this? Why don't they do that? And even as a kid, I remember like looking at my parents and their friends and things like that, of like, you still can't, like, you're not too old. Like, why aren't they doing this? Going after their dreams, or taking this chance on themselves, or something they believe in. And I find, as I reflect back, it's a big part of it is that brain shifting. The big part is the social programming. The other part of it, is just that as we get older, we're prone to take less risks. Like even now, I feel myself like when I want to, I have this urge to go play basketball, and now I go, yeah, but I could hurt my back because I haven't played in a while. Whereas like before, I'd go out charging like I was 17 years old again. And I'm just like, where is this? I call it like the old mentality. I'm like, I'm not that old. Like, where is this coming from? It's a self-preservation thing. But if we acknowledge that and we're aware of that, it can be bypassed. It can be overridden, I know I reference this person a lot, only simply because they've had such a influence and impact on my life, and like my what I want to do in my career, um and professionally, but like Tom Cruise. And like thinking about like just watching like Top Gun, and he's got the new Mission Impossible movie coming out, and like he's getting ready to turn 60, and he still is pushing himself and exploring and taking risks physically and everything else. And I'm like, well, he clearly trains to do that. It's not like he just jumps up and does it off the couch. So it's still possible. And he's one example of many. There's fitness people that are in their 60s and 70s and 80s that are like in top physical, better than they were in their 20s because of how they eat and things like that. But it's interesting how we limit ourselves, and we justify not taking risks. And like we're creatives, man. Like that's what we're supposed to do. And it's like this ideology or belief that like that can only, there's like a, I don't know, and I don't know if anybody else feels this way. It's like something that's been popping up for me, but like this idea of like, oh yeah, I missed my window, because that's like in your teenage years to your 20s of like this energy and this um I don't know, for me it's almost like I gave myself permission to, because I didn't know anything, like everything was so new that I was like, I don't know, like I'm just going to go in and jump in there and figure it out. But now it's like I've experienced enough that I actually hold myself back, because I'm like, well, I should know better by now. I should have achieved this. I should have achieved that. And it's like, if we're not taking risks, man, especially as creatives, like, if you were born to create as an artist, and, again, like this isn't just speaking, this is speaking more towards, you know, true artists, like in the sense, I shouldn't say true artists, but true, like how we define artistry, like as an actor, a director, a painter, musician, things like that. But, I feel everybody's an artist in their own right in any field. Like people are artists with numbers and woodworking and things like that. But man, if we're not taking risks and if we're not challenging ourselves, we stop exploring what life is about. Like Alan Watts has this great lecture where he talks about why we die. And he's like, well, you have to die to make way for the new, because the universe is experiencing itself through each individual. And as you get older and stop taking risks and stop learning new things, the universe needs to get you out of its way to bring itself back into the universe to explore it with fresh eyes. Because if we just had a whole bunch of old people that said, oh, I know how the world works or the universe works and everything else, and they stopped exploring, the universe wouldn't be experiencing itself through itself. And I just always felt that was a very interesting perspective. And it makes a lot of sense of our existence. But it's like, I find it interesting, the people that really live long lives, and not just long lives physically, but joyfully, like people who are in joy and don't, they don't take things too seriously, but they're always curious. They're always exploring and pushing themselves, and they don't limit themselves by how old they are or what they've done in their life. I say this all the time about, like, I reference it more into acting in the sense of somebody like an actor starts a scene and they're like, well, I'm going to approach it from this point. And then the other actor comes in and brings something into it that affects that trajectory. And instead of allowing the scene to go its own way and go with the flow, they keep forcing and saying, well, I already went down this path. Or we do it. We're taught to do it in our just in life, which is like, well, if you went to college, let's say you start college, and then like, well, I started college, so I have to finish it. Well, I've been dating this person for 3 years, so I've already put the time in. And I equate that to, if you're driving down the interstate and you see an exit you want to take and you don't get over in time and you miss the exit, and going, oh, well, I'll just stay here and I hope I make it back there. Like, what do? Like we go to the next exit, we get off, we get back on the interstate, or we take a back road to get to where we want to go. We don't just stay on the interstate and keep going. But it's interesting in life. We just dig in, man. We just keep digging in. And it's like this thing of like, well, I've already committed this much of my life to this trajectory, so I'm just going to stick with it. And, oh, I'm too old, I'm too old to be changing horses and things like that. But it's like, that's our job. That's our job as creatives, is to push the limits. And we can only do that by pushing our mental limits, by moving beyond the beliefs we have on ourselves of what we think would work. Like, it's fascinating to me how many, like a studio, or, I say a studio because usually studios do this, but they create what's called tentpole movie franchise, which is like a Fast and the Furious, a Mission Impossible, Star Wars, like something, a film that they can just continue to build out and make a lot of projects and films off of, because it makes financial sense, and it's pretty cool what they're doing now. But like, generations shift, and not like even a Doctor Who, which has been going on, I think, for 50 or 60 years, they had to change out the actors. They had to change the stories that they explored, even though it was the same thing. Things change, and you have to constantly push yourself. So if you're to explore what's going on in life now, or like, you can't, I don't know if this is coming across clear, but you can't find a formula that works and then just think that you're going to write it out to the end. I mean, you can, but like, once that well's dry, like, are you being fulfilled? Like, so many actors, in working with actors over for the years I've been doing it, so many actors, like, they'll come in and they'll work really hard to have to really get a handle on a scene, and then one time they do, and they're like, that's it, and then next week they try to come in and do it again like they did the week before. But it's like, you've changed. 7 days have gone by. You are not the same person you were 7 days ago. And your perspective of the world, your emotions, like, if a girl or a partner last week told you, that they're in love with you, and it brought up all this sense of love and endorphins and everything else, and you came in the class and did that scene, and that's why you were so open. And then within that week, they said, I fell in love with somebody else, and you're not the one, and crushed you. And then you expect to come in and do the scene the same way. You're not the same person. Every day we're changing. We're learning, if we allow ourselves to. The world's changing around us, especially now. Look how quick the world's changing by the day. I think I said this in another one of these, but I was listening to this podcast, and they talked about that the science study or whatever, but they said, if you were to pick up the Wall Street Journal today and read it front to back, you observe, just reading that, not the rest of your day, but just reading the Wall Street Journal front to back, you have taken in as much information as somebody in Shakespearean's day did in their entire life. And if you think about that, how can you stay the same person day to day with that much information coming at you? But like, we get locked in, and I know it's an age thing, it's a societal thing, it's a survival thing, that we want to find the formula that works, and then we want to like stick to it. And we've all seen actors, directors, and things like that, that just keep doing the same move, the same character, the same movie. I think, if I was talking about this yesterday, actually, was Matthew McConaughey. We're talking about his rom-com movies, and I'm like, I can't tell them apart. Like, between Failure to Launch and what is it? How to Lose a Man in 10 Days. Like, I'm not knocking it. I think they were all fun and things like that. It's the same story in a sense. It's the same whatever. And even like, he was smart enough, and I don't even think it was an intelligence thing. It was an intuition thing, if you listen to his book. But he talks about that, is that he was just unfulfilled, and he decided, like, this isn't fulfilling me. I need to. I conquered this mountain. What's next? And he had to go through this growing pain where they were like throwing, like at one point offered him $14 million to do a film that he kept turning down, which is more money than he'd been offered in his whole career. But he's just like, nah, man, like it's not about the money. I got to fulfill this thing. And so therefore he then, I think he did Dallas Buyers Club was the first thing that like then put him on this new trajectory in his career. I mean, there's we've all seen the ones that like find this path of success and they milk it all the way till the end, till their career or their physical body is dead. And then we see the people that are constantly reinventing themselves and trying new things. And sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. And of course, the world's very harsh when it doesn't work and criticize, but but when it does, they celebrate it. But it's not even about that. It's like, if you as an artist are not taking risks, then you're not really fulfilling a major part of artistry. You're not growing. You're not like, and I don't say that from a sense of mastering something, right? Because if you want to master a technique, like you think of the Bruce Lee, I don't fear a man who has practiced 1,000, 1,000 moves. I fear the man who practiced one kick 1,000 times. And I know I probably butchered that, but deal with it. But mastery, like if you're trying to master a technique, that's one thing. But you can master, but even doing that, like 1,000 kicks, you're not doing the kick the same way. You're constantly tweaking it and looking for that sweet spot, but you're constantly evolving. I just see, and I see this in actors, but it's in myself, which is why I'm having the conversation. I'm not even talking to you, I'm talking to myself. That's how selfish I am. But I mean, we're all mirrors. We're all reflectors of each other. But my God, I used to take so many risks, even creatively. Like prior to moving to LA, the second time, my dad and stepmother came down to Florida to visit, and we were just sitting in their hotel room, and this Partridge Family song came on, and was it? Yeah. And all of a sudden it just like, this visual came up of taking that song and putting it to a Coca-Cola commercial. And I just like a dog on a bone, I just bit on this thing. I could not let it go. And I'm writing it down, and I'm like, and from then on for months, I went into pre-production, into production. I never shot a music video in my life. But I had to express this vision I had. I ended up talking to a local city, part of where I lived, but it was like this little town that was like kind of down the beach, little community. And I asked, because I love the aesthetics of their buildings. It had vintage feel, and I want to do this vintage look. So I talked them into blocking off their main street for an entire day so I could shoot this thing. I called up a bunch of people and car clubs to get these vintage cars down there so I could park them there. I had a seamstress put together to make from scratch this dress that matched my vision. I bought all these Coca-Cola bottles and stuff and hand painted them. I got I auditioned all of these actors, and I took them in. I found a studio. I took them in and had them re-record the song so that they could lip sync it over on set. Like it was this whole big production, and like it didn't come out perfect. Like in hindsight, there's like, again, you can only connect the dots looking backwards, but in hindsight, I look at it and I go, oh, I could have done it so much easier, in the sense of like how much, but I didn't know at the time. I only know because I did it. But the point is I did it. And now I think about like going out and like playing around and shooting something, and I go, oh, I got to do this. And like, I talk myself out of it before I begin. And a lot of it is fear of failure. What if it doesn't work? And it's like, what happened to that part of me that was just like, I got this idea and I got to fulfill it. And that's why I say, like, back then, I feel like a big part of it was that I gave myself the breathing room, permission to do it, because I hadn't had experience. But it's like, well, now I've been doing it for all these years. Like, I better do something, it better be great, or else, like, what do people say? Or like, what does that say about my skill set if I haven't? It's such bullshit, man, that we tell ourselves. So we stop taking risks, or we want, we're so tired of losing or failing, that we stop taking risks, and we go, well, let me find what works, and let me, like, just get comfortable. And I get that. Like, there's days for me, I'm just like, man, I need a good couple months of, like, cruise control, of, like, winning, so I could, like, so I'm not having to grind it out and everything else. But in doing so, what are we really learning about ourselves as artists? What are we learning about people, or the human consciousness, or whatever it is that when you get into this work, you explore? I look again, like, going back, looking at my nieces and things like that, like, they I find it funny that they'll, like, not just them, but any kids as adults, like, a kid will watch a kid and they'll go do this, and they'll play with this thing, and then they'll run over, play with this thing, and then they'll go paint this thing. And, like, if you were to sit them down at the end of the day and go, why did you play with that? And then why did you stop doing that and go do that? And they'll literally go, I don't know, because they don't know. But as an adult, you can sit there and go, well, you need to finish what you start, or you need to pay attention, you need to, whatever bullshit that we, regurgitate. But the reality is, they're following their intuition. They explore this thing until till they reach the threshold of whatever fulfillment or information they need to they're looking for. And then it doesn't spark their interest, and then they go to this thing until it doesn't fulfill, until they feel like doing this. And then you get to an age where we're told we have to pick one thing and stick to it. It's not what we're designed to do. We're explorers, man. Human beings are natural explorers, but especially artists. We're supposed to always be pushing the limits, always pushing the status quo. So if you're not putting yourself in uncomfortable positions, I'd like to say every day, but I know that's exhausting. And it's like, I have to get up, I have to meditate, I got to do my green smoothie, I got to stretch, I got to do yoga, and then I got to go to work. And oh, right, I got to take a risk this week. Like, I know that's not reality if opportunities present themselves, but, like, if you're not, when you're doing the work, but at least once a week, if you're not doing something out of your comfort zone, you're becoming displacent, man. Like, when I think of that, and this isn't a judgment, like, when I think of that, even for myself, it always made me sad, even at a young age, like going and visiting, like, my great grandparents, or family members that were in the hospital or older, and they're just sitting there watching TV. They eat, they sleep, they go to the bathroom, they watch TV. Even, like, towards the end of my grandparents' lives, going to visit them at the retirement home, and, like, as I walk down the hallway, looking in the doorways left to right, there's all these people just either laying in bed or sitting watching TV, literally waiting to die. And it's like, if we're not taking risks on a daily basis, but if we're not taking risks every chance we get, at least every week, man, we're already in the retirement home. Like, what new thing are we discovering about ourselves, even? about life, about society. Like people sit there and I have these conversations about people, oh man, the world, blah, 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 and these people. And I'm just like, let's take a step back and emotionally disconnect from it. And let's watch this ecosystem, if you will, function. And just be fascinated by, by it in the sense of, what is this saying? Be curious, don't be judgmental. Because if you're judgmental, you close your ability off to see it any other way. But if you're curious, you discover new things. But if we're not taking risks, if we're not pushing ourselves out of our comfort zones, when actors would come to me and be like, Brent, what scene should I do this month? I'd be like, what scares the shit out of you? And they'd be like, well, I just couldn't get up, I just couldn't get up on stage to do a romantic scene. I'm like, then do a romantic scene. Well, I couldn't do, this, where my mom was dying scene, that like, I couldn't handle that. Then do that, because something's there. The reason you have resistance, because there's something there that wants to be explored. The child part of you, the child version of you wanted to explore that. When did that change? When that part of your brain kicked on, when, your society convinced you enough that you should be successful by 23 years old because Alexander the Great conquered the world by 30. Yeah, he might have conquered the world by 30. By 32, he was dead. And like, he didn't conquer, he conquered the known world, by the way. And he was bred from the moment he was born to do that. So he got his 10,000 hours in pretty quick. Plus he had all slaves and everything else to help him. I mean, if you had the entire world, community backing your dream to become a successful actor, you'd do it in a short period of time too. Like, I hate those memes that go around. It's like, so-and-so, did this by 23. What are you doing? Bitch, I'm surviving. Like, I'm trying to pay my bills at this point. It's a whole different world that what you're comparing me to, but that's a side rant. Sorry about that. I'm not sorry. It's where we go. But the point is that if we're not taking risks and pushing ourselves, like, what the hell are we doing here? We're in the retirement home watching Jeopardy, waiting for our body to shut down, our brain to, which it does, by the way. I always have the joke is like, what the number 2 killer of people is? It's retirement, because people stop using their brains, their creativity, their bodies. You know what the number 1 killer of people is? Death. So that's my joke. But it's true. Like, studies have shown, many studies have shown, is that like, once people retire, I think they're dead within like 3 to 10 years or something like that. I've had a couple family members or close friends of the family that have literally died within 24 hours of them retiring. Like, their heart just went, or it's the craziest thing. When I was a kid and I'd hear people talk about retirement, I remember thinking, man, I don't want to retire. Like, I like doing stuff. I mean, if you're just looking to like it to be like easy and like, I get that, like, definitely, like, financially and career and things like that, like, to have the wind to your back, absolutely. Like, because if you have the wind to your back, if you have resources and things like that, it allows you more opportunity. Like, you get to rest to then take on bigger projects, to explore, take bigger risks. But I find most people, even when they have the resources, they're still not taking risks. Like, then what's the point of having all those resources? But man, like, even if you can put yourself on tape every day, you can learn to how to direct a movie, how to write a movie, or, and I say movie, but I mean, like a web series or a short film or like anything, but paint, I pick up the canvas and paint stuff once in a while just to fulfill that. If you look behind me like this, this is weird. Okay, so this right here is like I took resin in these pictures and I started resining stuff. And I got some 3D art I started doing, I'm going to get back to, that has to do with resin. And I find every time I do that, I just find this joy, and it actually opens me up in my acting and directing and writing stuff as well. When I'm doing other type of creating different types of art. But if we're not taking risks, we're not growing, we're not learning anything new. We're saying, I've figured this thing out. I know how it is. I know the outcome. And because I've experienced in the past as a different version of myself, I know that it'll never be different. And we say it as this absolute in our head, or even to people. And I just find as I'm getting older, like, and I get it because I don't enjoy being around a lot of people in the sense of the things that I used to just like accept and want to be a part of the crowd and stuff like that. I'm like, if it's not stimulating conversation, if it's not positive, if it's not talking about this, I don't want to be around it. And so therefore I'm not around a lot of people. But it's very easy to get into seclusion and say, I just want to stay in my safe little apartment or in my community. But I'm like, man, there's so much to explore in the world. There's so much to explore within myself to just go, well, I'm at that age. And it's like, well, this is as good as it gets. Like, no, man, it changes every day, and it pushes, and I try to push myself as a human being, but especially as a creator, doing things out of my comfort zone like I used to do. And I'm bypassing social program, but I'm also bypassing this, this part of my brain that is just inevitable, but if I'm aware of that, I know that it's not the truth. It's not my intuition. It's not reality. It's just it's a programming. It's like when you turn on your computer and a program pops up and you're not going, oh, well, that program is the computer. No, it's just a program. I just got to close it and close the window out. It'd be like, I don't know, this is going to date me, but like, back in the day, if you had like AOL instant messenger, like it would automatically sign you in, and everybody's like kind of like what apps do now, but like it would just, and then people are like, hey man, what's up? And you're like, oh shit, I don't have to chat with people. So you'd like have to go in and turn it off is my point. But our purpose is to take risks. Go back to that 2-3-year-old self who was just like, didn't like, if your parents weren't around, you would have crawled across the street, a busy street, because you didn't know what death was. You didn't fear death, but you were curious, what is that thing over there? What happened to that version of you? That's the artist. Or when it's like, oh, you can't play that role because you're this race, or I can't play that role because it's a guy's role. Like, okay, the writer wrote it as a male, but that doesn't mean it can't be. Like, let's see what it looks like as a woman doing it. Let's see what it looks like as a transgender person doing it. Let's see what it looks like as a bi, I don't know, whatever you identify as. But because you have a certain perspective of the world, you're going to approach it differently. I want to see that. Let's see what that looks like. Holy shit. And then you see it, and then you go, wow, I never thought of it that way. I just expanded. Going back to Alan Watts, I love Alan Watts. And he says, we think that like the Big Bang was the start of the universe. And then like we are the remnants of the Big Bang. And he's like, no, the Big Bang is still happening. This every moment. It's the big, it's never stopped. the universe is still expanding. We are part of the Big Bang. It's all connected. You are still that version of you that wants to explore and expand. It's still within you. If you don't allow the programming and the beliefs and everything to stop you from exploration, switch up your life. Switch up. I don't mean quit your job or like, burn your house down with all your stuff. And I'm saying like, do something that makes you uncomfortable. And if you do it, and then go, wow, that I really don't like that. Well, okay, then try something else. But to lock yourself into this is who I am. This is what I like and what I don't like. And I'm only going to do those things. My God, that's a sterile environment. And to me, it's the equivalent of that retirement home where you're just sitting there watching TV and just waiting for your checkout time. But isn't it interesting we do that? It's human, like our human race does that. But like everybody's, wants to stay alive as long as they can, just for pure to say that they're alive, but yet in their lives, they're not alive. Here's a question. Are you alive in your creativity? Like I find myself doing that all the time. I'm like, God, all I ever wanted to do was act, and I love acting. And I'm like, Brent, really? You love acting? You love acting so much that you haven't done it in a week. Because I'll tell you, the 5-year-old or like 5-year-old version of me, or like even like looking at my nieces, I bought my niece a tool belt because they were my sister and her husband were going to they decided to build a tree house or playground for him. And she was like, the youngest one was so like, when are we going to build this thing and everything? So I remember when I got like my first tool belt and toolbox when I was a kid, and just what it meant to me and still does mean to me, and the bonding my father and I had over it and stuff like that. So I bought her a tool belt so she could participate. She didn't take it off for like a week. Like she even tried to wear it to bed, and she's like trying to fix it. Like she was passionate about using that tool belt until she wasn't anymore. But that's a whole other story. But the point is, like, for that week, she was locked onto it. Like that's how I used to be with acting. But now I justify, oh, I got to do this, and I got life stuff, but I don't always prioritize my acting, but yet I call it my passion, my thing. It's all excuse that I have to overcome. And in doing so, taking a risk on myself. And sometimes, I'll wrap it up with this. And if there's any questions, feel free to type it in the chat while I'm finishing up here, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. But maybe like that's the biggest risk, especially as creatives. Maybe that's the biggest risk, is taking a chance on ourselves, to really stepping out of our comfort zone, even creatively, no matter where you're at in your journey, whether you're just getting started as an actor, or you've got some success behind your belt. I see a lot of successful people in our industry break over the line and really like make a lot of money and have fame, things like that. And then they still wait for the studios to, create a project for them, or a writer or something like that. And like they still won't, even though they have all this stuff, they're still not willing to take a risk, or or they're doing a character, or like Matthew McConaughey doing those rom-com films, like they're in a genre that's serving them, but and they're so afraid to step out of that because they're like, well, what if it doesn't work? And it's like, well, then you'll know that it doesn't work. But it's like, what's the younger version of you was willing to take on any role just to explore, but now that you're older and now you've got success, and now you don't want to lose that, so you're living in fear. Like, I find it interesting, like people in their 60s are already checking out, like they're at the end of their life. And it's just like, man, with technology and healthcare and stuff, like things changing so quickly, it's like What if you were to live to 200? Like, what if by the time you reach 100, you're able to live for another 100 years, but you're already checking out at 60? And if you look at how many people, there's not many, because, I don't think it's an artist thing. It's a human consciousness thing and societal thing. But so it's not just about success, like people who become successful, or people that are not successful, but there's so many great examples. I say that there's not so many great examples, because there's so few of them, but people who have stayed in the game so long that they've had they've caught their second wind in their career. Christopher Walken, like, the dude, he's had like 4 or 5 career explosions at this point. Judi Dench, I mean, Samuel L. Jackson won't go away. Like, that dude stayed, like, I don't know, like, if I ever go, what's Samuel L. Jackson doing up? And all of a sudden he's back, and then like he's on fire again, because he's trying new things. He's exploring new characters. Like, he just has this new show coming out where he's exploring, like, going back to Tom Cruise. Like, if you get a chance, you should really watch, whether you like Tom Cruise or not. It's not about him in that sense, but he has a really good talk at Cannes he did, when they, like, and I say this because this is like one of the only conversations I've ever seen him, interviews I've had, where they like ask him about cinema. And it's a really good conversation. And what he talks about, like, his passion for cinema and why he makes movies for movie theaters and things like that. But they're asking him about, like, I forget what the question was about him, like, dwelling on the past or which things. And he's like, I'm always looking to the future. I'm always looking to learn and expand. He goes, that, like, that's why him doing the stunts and things like that, people think, oh, he's crazy and everything. He's like, I get interested in something, I study it, and then I want to explore it. And then once it's done, I either build upon it or I go to something else. And that's exactly what I'm talking about. Like, it's not whether you like him as an actor, as a person, or whatever, but it's how he approaches the world and approaches the art. Is that like Da Vinci or somebody like that, who was constantly exploring up until their last breath, not for success, not for likes, not for publicity, but to discover as much as they could before they were no longer able to. I mean, think of it like this. If I told you, hey, in 8 years, you're not going to be able to, you're going to lose your ability to walk. And you won't be able to use your legs for the rest of your life. You would go out, hopefully, you would go out and explore every which way to use those legs leading up to that day. Even if I told you, here's the time it's going to happen, even at the last minute, you'd be like, I'm going to take my last walk. I'm going to take my last swim. I'm going to take my last run, and I'm going to do everything I can before these things shut off, with the risk that they could shut off while you were in midstream. So if that's true, then why aren't we taking more risks? Because the clock's ticking and we don't know when that clock's going to stop. You came into this conscious state, whatever it is, and you had something implanted in you for whatever reason to explore through art, through acting, through becoming other characters. Why are you not doing that every day? Like, not when you go out into the day, not everybody know, like, you don't know every single human being. So you could literally go out your door every day and play a different character and just see what that character, how that character lives in this world as a experiment. Somebody who speaks Irish, with this Irish accent, or, some, British accent or something like that, and just put on this, like my niece, the tool belt, and play and see what you discover. Seth says, love Alan Watts. This is perfect timing. Yes! Exclamation point. That's what actors always do is, yes! Like, why are you yelling? Well, there's an exclamation point, Brent. It's like, that's emphasis. That's not scream. There's no screaming point. Love Alan Watts. This is perfect timing. Yes. Feeling stagnant is probably a higher urge to take. A real risk. I'm sure it says risk. Yeah, for sure. I mean, as they say, Rolling Stone gathers no moss. You don't drink from a pond because the water's sitting still. You drink from a river. Why do we drink from a river? Because it's moving. It's picking up nutrients. It's getting rid of bacteria. It's constantly moving. If you're not being a river in your creativity, you're gathering moss. You're gathering the bacteria that's going to kill your soul, man. It's never too late. It's never too late. I had a neighbor. She was like 92 years old at the time, when I lived across the street from her. But this woman, like, I think she was like 70. She started buying up Wendy's and Taco Bells and stuff like that. She was just like, well, I want to start investing, like have something to do. So she educated herself on how to buy franchises. And then I think she was 80 and she started studying Spanish. And then she went to Spain or Mexico. I can't remember, for like 6 months, but she like literally taught herself how to speak Spanish. She's just like, I'm sure she's passed by now, but she was constantly pushing herself to learn new things. I mean, isn't that what life's about? Especially for an artist. Like, I don't know, man. Life's too interesting for me. And especially if you have the resources and you're not using them. Like, hand them off to somebody else who's hungry and wanting to go out and explore the world with them or explore the art. There's just so much. I just know there's so much within each and every one of us, especially as creators. Whether you're a musician, you know. I just saw this music video for Third Eye Blind. This new music video for Third Eye Blind. I like in it, and it wasn't even. It didn't catch my interest, but I was like, good for them for still trying, still doing it. Because like we're in a society where everybody is like, here's the life limit. I don't want to get political, but isn't it interesting that we set term limits for ourselves on success or careers and things like that, of like where we should be, unless it's politics, and then you can stay in a place of political position until the day you die. Why is that okay in politics, but not in our lives? And furthermore, why do we need society to give us authorization or justification to do that? To say, I'm an artist, I'm constantly exploring, no matter what the box office says, or what my fans on TikTok or whatever say. Like, I'm constantly exploring whether you give me permission or not, whether it works or not. And maybe it doesn't work commercially, but it works for me personally, and it's a great fulfillment. So think about that. What do you want to discover? What do you want to express? Find the things that scare you. Make a list. That's it. There's your homework. Make a list of the things that scare you the most creatively. Maybe it's writing and shooting and directing your own web series. Maybe it's doing a scene where you play a gay or lesbian character with another same-sex actor, and you have to be intimate and stuff like that. Maybe it's a vulnerable heartbreak scene or something. I don't know. Make a list and be honest. If you start shaking and crying and and doing your dishes all of a sudden, even though the dishes should have been done last week, but all of a sudden you're like, well, before I make this list, I gotta do the dishes. Write out the list. That's resistance. So make a list of the things that scare you the most creatively, or even personally. I'd say creatively, because if you go personally, you're like, well, I'm going to work on all this stuff personally before creatively, and then you're still doing the same shit. Make a list out of all the things that scare you creatively, and then every week take one on. You won't be the same person. And when you get used to taking risks like that, it's amazing how fearless you will become, and how unscary the world will be, and how little you'll care about what other people think about you, or doing it right. Be that 5-year-old man who didn't have a dog in the fight, wasn't worried about dying, wasn't worried about success, paying bills. They were just curious. Isn't that interesting? Our society has a saying, curiosity killed the cat. That just hit me. They've been programming us since childhood to be afraid of our own intuition and instincts. Curiosity didn't kill the cat. The car did. Or, but what if that was just their journey? And maybe showed all the other cats, don't go that way because you could get hit by a car. Cool. That doesn't mean I shouldn't move at all. I'd like to start a new saying. Curiosity freed the cat. Because what cat would want to live in a world where they couldn't be curious? Maybe the cat jumped in front of the car because it just got sick of living in a world of restriction and wanted freedom. Or maybe just want to say, you know what, this is what I want to do. I don't know what cat I'm talking about. There's no cat or a car, but I don't know. Curiosity killed the cat equals don't explore, grow up, be an adult, be a Toys R Us kid. Anyways, that was a lot, but that felt good. Hope it helps some of you, any of you out there on your journey. Maybe it comes at the right time. Maybe it came at the wrong time, and therefore it is the right time, because there's never the right time for any time. I don't know. But it felt good. I needed to hear it. And let's take some risk, man. Let's see what still wants to birth out of our creativity with no end result other than the discovery itself. All right, because even treasure hunters spend years and years and years searching and find nothing, but all the skills and techniques they learn along the way, when they finally do find that one shipwreck that has billions of dollars worth, it all comes together and makes it worth it, and they never have to look back. That is totally possible. And you could be a person like we know Tarantino now, because the risk he took in trying a different type of story structure or genre of film. It wasn't even a genre of films. It's just the way the characters and the way he, structured the story. But like the people who change the world, it's because they're still curious, and they don't go into, I'm going to change the world. They go into like, I have this intuition. Let's explore that and see what happens, and see. And then, through byproduct, they change the world or inspire a generation. And if you ask those people, like, I wasn't trying to change the world or inspire a generation. This song came to me, or this thing, and I started digging into it, and people responded. So be willing to take the risk on yourself. So again, hope that helps. If you have any questions from this, feel free to reach out to me. at actorshole@gmail.com. Check out actorshole.com. We got a online course there with script and character breakdown course, which is cool. We're going to be launching some other stuff here coming up. If you want to do a one-on-one, anything like that, be happy to work with you. In the meantime, keep taking those risks. Take care of yourself. Shift your mindset. And I don't know. Get out of the retirement home. There's a lot of life to be lived in all forms of fashions. And whatever you come up with, share it with me. Love to see what this inspires through you. So check us out next week. I'm gonna be doing another one of these every Saturday, 11 a.m. until the lights go out. So yeah, have a great week, and remember, stay creative.